Good afternoon. Welcome to the Author Life. My name is Diana, and I'm the author of How Spirituality Saved My Life. I'm also the creator and the host of the Vibe podcast. We have been on hiatus since November of 2023. I don't have a date to go back to podcasting, but because I applied for the Vibe podcast to be trademarked, if that's something that I wish to revisit later on down the line, I'm free to do so. Okay. If you have an idea, a business idea, whatever it is, protect yourself with a trademark or LLC. And shout out to Pierre because he's also helping people in that realm. Yes, you can start your own business. Yes, you can. Being broke, absolutely. And in one of my other videos that's currently on private, I said, I look up to people like Sylvester Stallone, the writer of all the Rocky movies. When he wrote the first Rocky, he had no money. He had to sell his dog in order to fund his project. But look at the legacy that he has left. You see, so that's something that I look up to. All right. So the topic of the hour is cocaine is a hell of a drug. Wow. So, for the last 3 years, I have been preaching the good word wherever I go. And the most disturbing thing that I have witnessed is my community, the New York Puerto Ricans. It's not only the Puerto Ricans, though. A lot of people are doing cocaine. A lot. And so that right there disturbs me because how can we talk about discrimination, racism, all that stuff if you are powdering your nose? I cannot have a logical conversation with someone who powders their nose. So 3 years ago, I started studying everything, and I also revisited my college books and notes. And in my human anatomy and physiology book, there is a special piece on crack cocaine, which is the era that I come from. Me personally, I don't come from the customer aspect. All right. And that's all I'm going to say about that. That's for the books. But yeah, I didn't know that that was the norm in my community. Now, culturally, right? Our ancestors, the indigenous ancestors, they would inhale cahoba for spiritual reasons. What is cahoba exactly? I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it was a powder that they would ingest for spiritual reasons. Okay. And it would be like the shamans, medicine men doing this, medicine women doing this. And then prior to, they would fast, no food, no drink, and then go on this spiritual journey with the cahoba. In Colombia, they have the coca leaf, which is it's sacred, right? But, this is not the coca leaf, baby. This is a plant. I'm going to quote Cat Williams on this. He says, this is a plant, okay? This is not a drug. But once you start adding chemicals and shit, that's a drug. You doing drugs. You know what I mean? So I had no idea that cocaine or they got fentanyl, they got pills, that people were doing this regularly. I had no idea. I had no idea. So we're going to get to that in just a moment, but I like to show off books that I'm going to be reading. And so one of this is Honoring Your Ancestors, a guide to ancestral veneration by Mallory Vadois. So I started reading this and, I got emotional when it got to talking about blood ancestors and ancestral trauma. So I'm going to read it again from chapter 1, because another thing that I have witnessed is how quickly folks jump into the spiritual realm. It has become trending, the norm. There's even a movie about tarot. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to watch that movie just because I don't entertain bullshit at all. But I'm going to be reading this book from the beginning because I got too emotional, and it takes away from the purpose. Okay. And so another book that I'm going to be reading is A Journey to the Roots of Rastafari, the Essene Nazarite Link. So I already started reading this, and where we left off was in the Apocalypse and Enoch, who's, I don't know if I'm saying that properly. Remember, English is a second language for me. So he's also associated with the Archangel Metatron. So this is an epic journey as a writer, and I look forward to a very bright future. But first, we have to get into the topic of the hour. And I'm right by my chalkboard, and we have some things that we need to get into. So I'm going to be creating an altar for my ancestors, La Comisión de los Indios. So for those of you that do not know, right, I consider myself a spiritualist. But if you wish to label me, what I do is Santeria and Espiritismo. Espiritismo is Puerto Rican spirituality. It's folk Catholic with a blend of African and indigenous culture. And so within Santeria, there's also the 21 divisions, which includes a lot of saints, African and indigenous. And so I have a calling to create an altar for my ancestors. In the meantime, I'm not going to be wearing a hat, and my hair is going to be out loose, either in a ponytail or in a braid, because we grow our hair for our ancestors. All right. Also, as a writer, I'm documenting my experience from my time at the Diamond Club, my very first strip club in Port Chester. I was there the night it got raided, was not one of the ones who got arrested. And so 3 years ago, I got on this quest, and I, started to bump into people from my past. You know, I am very nice, and I wish that we could all do this together, but nah. I don't wish to talk to any females at this time. I need a zoology degree in order to talk to today's females. I'm actually very disappointed and disgusted in the females that we have out here today. And that's also another reason why I don't date. So I had put this video on private that had to do with dating. So we're going to be releasing that for a bit. It is very graphic and stuff like that. Just remember that all of my videos are for your entertainment. This video is going to be on YouTube and also on the podcast page. Now, during this time that I have been laying low, I've been trying to think what to do with Facebook, because these are my day ones. When I began this journey 3 years ago, a lot of people shitted on me on the strength that they thought I wouldn't be able to do this by myself. Like, you guys don't even know me. You guys have no clue. All right. And we've been rocking and rolling for 3 years. And to be honest, straight up, I don't think I would be able to do this journey without my Facebook support. I opened the main page, Diana Costas, on November 11, 2009. And 2 years ago, it became professional. So it just lets me know that we are on an epic indie journey, and I'm documenting this entire experience. My time at the clubs. It's epic. So with that being said, I'm going to let you guys know here that we're going to be moving away from the live videos. The last 3 years, although we have accomplished a lot, I've had stalkers or a stalker tripping me up along the way. These people or this person is very fortunate and blessed that the police refused to write a police report for me, which is in their rights. They don't have to help whoever, they don't have to. That's in their union guidelines. They don't have to. So I see that as a blessing. But because of the live videos taking place in my home, it kind of like helps my stalker out. So I'm going to stay away from the Facebook lives unless it's a special event or reason. Okay, so shout out to Eric Borrero and Anthony Harvey on Facebook. Is bittersweet, bittersweet, but these are the two friends that will be getting my very first book, How Spirituality Saved My Life. Now, let's get into the book of the hour. It's quite heavy, so it's on the floor. I was like, okay. Cocaine. All right. So, the reason why I'm releasing this video from private is because in that video, I talk about the brain book, and how cocaine, alcohol, drugs blocks this part here. And it's like a false sense of confidence with these folks. It's a lot. Okay. So we're going to take a deeper look. It says here, pleasure me, pleasure me. That's what that drug does. It gives you, it's called pseudo, right? It gives you, or a placebo effect, I guess. It gives you a false sense of confidence, false sense of pleasure. And ultimately, what I need my people to understand is that this is like the main component to crack. So you are essentially a crackhead. Shout out to all the moms that do coke with their kids. I've seen that too. It says here, deep inside the hypothalamus, and that's in the brain, is a small bundle of neural tissue called the pleasure center that motivates much of the human behavior. The pleasure center reinforces our drives to eat, drink, and reproduce. But in doing so, it also makes us perilously vulnerable. Yeah, because that false sense of pleasure, false sense of confidence can land you in big trouble. Few would deny that much of what we do and value is driven by the pleasure principle. Quotes, because I think there's a song. Isn't that Janet Jackson? And herein lies the genesis of addiction. And then the problem with this chemical is that it not only affects you, crackhead, it affects your children. If you are engaging in coke, crack, whatever you want to call yourself, you're affecting your children. This is something that stays in your body, I feel like, and a lot of people do drugs while pregnant, affecting the baby. Okay? It says here, our ability to feel good involves brain neurotransmitters. For example, the ecstasy of romantic love has been described as a brain bath of norepinephrine, dopamine, and especially phenylethylamine, PEA, which is target the pleasure center. Now, I'm not here to be talking down to people because I've popped ecstasy, I've done acid, but this is something that I did in my youth, like late teens, early 20s. This is something that I stopped. So nobody is blaming you for experimenting. But after a certain age, after a certain time, you need to understand that that is now addiction. Okay? It says here, Cole Porter knew. I never powdered my nose. I know that during my time in the strip club, a lot of people probably thought that, or somehow, because I've always loved Red Bull, and what I did do in the early 2000s was ephedrine. They were these pills, ephedrine pills, to lose weight, I was deeply involved in the strip club world. So you have to be fit. And so what I would do would be ephedrine, Red Bull, and that was like, whoa. But I never powdered my nose, never. It was something within me that was like, nah, never do that, because I've been around it, but I never did it. And I thank God that I never did it, because I have a clear mind, clear conscience, Cole Porter knew what he was talking about when he wrote, I get a kick out of you because these neurotransmitters are chemical cousins of the amphetamines. People who use speed, methamphetamine, artificially stimulate their brains to provide their pleasure flush. And then I guess with people doing these kinds of drugs is probably the reason why society is over sexualized. Like in my last video that I'm going to release from private, I said, I don't know what had this guy thinking that I was a sure thing, but you got to be careful, especially at the workplace, because that leads to sexual harassment allegations. You know what I mean? It says here, however, their pleasure is short-lived, because when the brain is flooded with neurotransmitters like chemicals from the outside, it makes less of its own. Why bother? And then that's where you see violent behavior, short temper, stuff like that. The wisdom of the body mediates against unnecessary effort. You got to see your brain as a computer that is always trying to correct and stuff like that. So if you're ingesting chemicals that mimic certain things in our bodies, it's just not going to produce. It's not going to produce it because it's already there. You have to be conscious enough that what you're doing is wrong. I'm talking about for your physical sense. I'm not here to judge you because you want to powder your nose. That's not my place. But I'm here letting you know that that's affecting the community. Cocaine, another pleasure center titillator, has been around for a long time, and it's prohibitively its expensive granular form, which is inhaled or snorted. Enter crack, the cheaper, much more potent, smokable form of cocaine. So you have to understand that you're doing crack. You're a crackhead. You have to understand that. Because the generation that I come from, didn't we make fun of crackheads? So why are we doing the same thing? Like, why are we doing crack and making fun of crackheads? It's very confusing what's going on out there. It says here, for $10 or less, a no-vice user can get wasted for the night and flooded with a rush of intense pleasure. But crack is treacherous and intensely addictive. It produces not only a higher high than the inhaled form of cocaine, but also a deeper crash that leaves the user desperate for more. And then I see this behavior in people whose parents have been crackheads. That behavior chemically, you passing that on to your children. The prevailing theory of how cocaine produces its effects, at least until the early 1990s, was that the drug first helps to stimulate the pleasure center and then squeezes it dry. Cocaine produces the rush by hooking up to the dopamine reuptake transporter protein, thus blocking the reabsorption of dopamine. As a result, the neurotransmitter remains in the synapse and stimulates the postsynaptic receptor cells again and again, allowing the body to feel its effect over a prolonged period. This sensation is accompanied by increases in heart rate, blood pressure, and sexual appetite. So then that would make sense for me as to why this disgusting, ugly coworker would disrespect me. Okay? But over time, and sometimes after just one use, the effect changes. As dopamine reabsorption continues to be blocked, that which had accumulated in the synapses is washed away and degraded, and the brain's dopamine supply becomes inadequate to maintain normal mood. And again, that's where you see a lot of anger issues, short temper, and stuff like that. The sending cells cannot produce neural dopamine fast enough to make up for its loss, and the pleasure circuits go dry. Meanwhile, the postsynaptic cells become hypersensitive and sprout new receptors in a desperate effort to pick up the dopamine signals. Like your brain is just trying to correct. A vicious cycle of addiction is established. Cocaine is needed to experience pleasure, but using it further depletes the neurotransmitter supply. So you think you need more, but what you're doing is more damage. Okay? Enter a new theory and a new player. It is beginning to look like another neurotransmitter, glutamate, which plays an important role in normal learning, is acting as the devil's advocate or tutor in the addiction experience. Researchers are now claiming that instead of actually producing the pleasurable feelings, dopamine works to heighten attention to external events, especially those that are rewarding, novel, or startling, thus facilitating learning. While the burst of dopamine release caused by the drug get the brain's attention, glutamate release in the pleasure centers increases, running 50 to 100% above normal levels. Imagine you know how they say I go from 1 to 100? Imagine you being at 100 at all times. This is why the hiring process at the job is very important. And this is why we have to be drug testing new candidates and things like that. And they sell things that'll clean your urine. But again, that's why the hiring process is very important. You need to screen your employees. You have to. That is a violation of the civil rights movement. And then y'all want to talk about how racist shit is? Girl. Glutamate signaling seems to produce more permanent changes in the brain that lead to compulsive drug-seeking behaviors elicited by external cues. Okay? And so we have these cokeheads that back it up with Red Bull or Monster. And that's exactly what you turn into, a monster. Hence, repeated exposure to cocaine seems to activate glutamate transmission and to prompt the synthesis of more glutamate receptors as cocaine addiction takes hold. So you got to understand, if you're doing coke on every single weekend, if you're doing coke for days, if you're doing coke every couple of days, if you're doing coke at all, you are an addict. You are in danger of becoming an addict, okay? Whatever the precise mechanism, the cocaine user becomes anxious and, in a very real sense, unable to experience pleasure without cocaine. And then these people are always angry. Ain't nothing good enough. They don't believe anything. They want to take, because they're trying to get pleasure out of something that's not even real. It's a figment of your own imagination, Cocaine addicts tend to lose weight, have trouble sleeping, develop cardiac and pulmonary abnormalities, crack heart and lung it's called, and have frequent infections. Cocaine addiction carries with it out of control, desperate craving that is notorious, difficult to manage or treat. Drug abusers call it jonesing. Various drugs have been used with mixed success to treat cocaine addicts. Traditional anti-addiction drugs take so long to reduce the overpowering craving that users commonly drop out of treatment programs. However, three new drugs are generating excitement as likely candidates to help addicts abandon their addiction. Manzindol, an appetite suppressant, binds dopamine receptors more tightly than cocaine, thus blocking cocaine effects. Reports on buprenorphine, a pain reliever, look even brighter. Researchers found that laboratory monkeys addicted to cocaine rapidly lost interest in the drug after receiving low doses of buprenorphine. Sorry, these words are hard for me. Acamprosate, a drug approved for treating alcoholism in Europe, modifies glutamate transmission. It shows promise for treating cocaine addiction, as do catalytic anti-cocaine antibodies, which degrade cocaine and hence prevent it from binding and causing its effects. Crack use in the United States is still a national problem. Cocaine related cardiovascular deaths due to hypersensitive crisis and strokes are increasing daily, and crack babies are a sad heritage. Okay? You guys gotta stop. A mixture of speed and crack called croak, and a new smokable form of speed called ice have gained a foothold in the United States. Unlike crack, which creates a 20 to 30 minute high, ice produces a high that lasts 12 to 24 hours, followed by a crash that seemingly creates psychosis, paranoid, schizophrenia. Moreover, a formaldehyde, embalming fluid, laced marijuana known as the street as here is dust. Over here is ill face has become popular. The thing is that so long as that you people, my people, black people too, as long as you guys are doing that, we can't talk about racism. So you guys are essentially holding us back. And then that's a disservice to our ancestors who have suffered. And then it says here, as if these were not enough to contend with a sinister kind of heroin known as China White that comes from the Golden Triangle of Southeast Asia is flooding the United States. Unlike the heroin forms displaced by cocaine in the 1980s, which had a purity of 5 to 10%, this heroin is up to 90% pure, and it can be snorted or smoked just like cocaine. Because heroin is a depressant that does not incite the violence that crack, a stimulant, does, the recent rise in heroin addiction went largely unnoticed. Sadly, I've seen that too. But you got to understand that in 2024, no, we have too many resources. You don't need that. You don't need to do all that. You know? Removed from the stigma and dangers of needle injections, the pattern of China White abuse mirrors that of cocaine, first appearing in the entertainment industry and filtering down to small-town USA. More expensive than cocaine, it demands dramatically higher doses to achieve the same effect. Deprived of the heroin, it increasingly depends on the body, goes into incapacitating nausea and convulsions, but with an overdose, the lungs fill with fluid and the user drowns. The brain, with its complex biochemistry, always circumvents attempts to keep it in a euphoric haze. You see, the brain is only there to help you, correct. and you're feeding it toxins. You're confusing yourselves. And then you want to talk about racist. Lord have mercy. Perhaps this means that pleasure must be transient and can be experienced only against a background of its absence. And then there's a picture of smoking with a crack pipe. Just say no. You hear me? Just say no. I don't know where, like, because when I came up, that shit was embarrassing. I don't know what happened. So then it's going to go into the chemical aspects, and that's for my own knowledge. I just wanted to share that piece with you all because in my 3-year journey, I have seen a lot. And seeing my people on crack cocaine is heartbreaking. Peace.